Ethan Cole collapsed against the frosted office window at 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, watching families celebrate below while his 7-year-old daughter slept alone in their freezing apartment across the city. His hands trembled, not from cold, but from the email glowing on his screen. Emergency project due by midnight. No exceptions. 3 years of this. 3 years since cancer stole his wife and left him drowning in a corporate machine that fed on desperation. He didn't know that 15 floors above him, billionaire CEO Vivian Mercer was about to discover the truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her own company. If you want to see how far a broken father will go to protect his daughter, and how one discovery can change 2 lives forever, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the 19th floor office hummed like angry wasps, casting everything in that particular shade of corporate misery that made 11 p.m. feel like 3 a.m. Ethan Cole sat hunched over his desk, his spine curved in a shape no 32-year-old body should hold, staring at spreadsheets that blurred together into meaningless columns of numbers. His coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago. He'd stopped tasting it around hour 9 of his shift anyway. Outside the windows, Chicago glittered with Christmas lights, strings of red and gold wrapped around buildings, shop windows glowing warm, families hurrying home through the December cold with shopping bags and laughter. Ethan watched them sometimes, during the brief seconds when he allowed himself to look up. They seemed like people from another planet, a planet where fathers came home for dinner, where kids didn't spend Christmas Eve with elderly neighbors because Daddy had one more emergency project. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, the 73-year-old woman from 4B who watched Lily when Ethan's shifts ran late, which meant basically every night. She's asleep. Don't worry, I told her you're helping Santa. Ethan's throat tightened. He typed back quickly. Thank you. I'll be there by midnight, I promise. He'd promised that 4 hours ago, too. The office around him sat empty except for the ghosts of abandoned cubicles and the security guard making rounds on the lower floors. Everyone else had left by 6. Normal people. People with lives. People whose supervisors didn't send emails at 7 p.m. on Christmas Eve with subject lines like, urgent, financial projections needed tonight. Ethan's fingers moved mechanically across the keyboard, entering data, cross-referencing reports, building presentations that his supervisor Marcus Webb would present to the executive team this morning now, and take full credit for. Again. It had been like this for 3 years. 3 years since Sarah died. 3 years since the medical bills started piling up faster than he could pay them, since the funeral costs drained their savings, since he'd realized with horrible clarity that his salary as a mid-level data analyst barely covered rent and daycare in a city that seemed designed to crush anyone who stumbled. He'd tried to get promoted, 5 times in 3 years. Each time, Marcus had smiled that thin-lipped smile and said the same thing. You're doing excellent work, Ethan, truly excellent, but you're not quite ready for advancement yet. Keep putting in the effort. Keep proving yourself. So Ethan kept proving himself, worked weekends, stayed late every night, covered for colleagues when they called in sick, took on projects that should have gone to teams of 3 or 4 people. And every year, the annual review came back the same, meets expectations. Never exceeds. Never enough for a raise that might let him afford to turn on the heat in January without choosing between warmth and groceries. His phone buzzed again. Not Mrs. Chen this time. Marcus Webb. How's that projection deck coming? Board wants it first thing tomorrow. Don't disappoint me. Ethan stared at the message. Tomorrow was Christmas. There was no board meeting on Christmas. He knew this because he'd checked the company calendar obsessively, hoping, praying that maybe this year he'd get the holiday off. Maybe this year he could wake up with Lily and watch her open the 2 small presents he'd managed to scrape together. A coloring book, a stuffed butterfly she'd pointed at in a shop window back in October. Not much, but wrapped with care, hidden in his closet, waiting. He typed back, almost done. Should have it to you by midnight. The reply came instantly. 11:45 or you're fired. Ethan's hands froze over the keyboard. 11:45. 15 minutes. He looked at the projection deck on his screen. 60 slides of financial analysis, market forecasts, competitive research. He'd been working on it for 6 hours and had maybe 40 slides done. 40 slides of work that should have taken a full team a week to complete properly. Work that Marcus had dumped on him at 7 o'clock with a casual, "Need this tonight, Cole. Hope that's not a problem." It was always not a problem, because if it was a problem, there were 1,000 other desperate people who'd take his job without complaint. Single mothers, recent immigrants, kids fresh out of college with loans crushing them. The company knew this. Marcus knew this. And they used it like a weapon. Ethan's chest felt tight. His vision swam. He couldn't finish 60 slides in 15 minutes. It was impossible. But he also couldn't lose this job. His fingers started moving again, faster now, sloppy. He copied slides from old presentations, changed a few words, updated numbers without double-checking them. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat gathered at his temples despite the cold office air. The clock in the corner of his screen ticked forward with brutal efficiency. 11:37, 11:41, 11:44. At 11:46, Ethan hit send on the email with the subject line, Q1 Financial Projections Final, and sat back in his chair, feeling like he'd just run a marathon. His whole body shook. His phone buzzed immediately. Marcus Webb. Received. Good boy. Merry Christmas. Good boy. Like a dog performing tricks. Ethan closed his eyes and pressed his palms against them until he saw stars. The pressure building in his skull felt like it might crack him open. 3 years of this. 3 years of being treated like machinery. 3 years of watching his daughter grow up through tired glimpses in the morning before school and brief goodnight kisses when he stumbled home past her bedtime. Sarah would have hated this. She'd always told him he was too kind, too willing to let people take advantage. "You've got to stand up for yourself, baby," she'd said once, months before the diagnosis, back when they were still just a normal couple arguing about normal things like bills and weekend plans. Don't let them walk all over you. But Sarah had never understood what it meant to be truly desperate. She'd grown up comfortable, middle class, with parents who could help when things got tight. She'd never known what it felt like to choose between electricity and groceries, to water down milk because you couldn't afford another gallon until Friday, to tell your 7-year-old that the heat was broken when really you just couldn't pay the gas bill this month. Ethan gathered his things, laptop, empty coffee mug, the jacket that didn't quite keep out the Chicago winter, and headed for the elevator. The office felt tomb-like around him. Rows of empty desks, dark computer screens, the kind of silence that made you hear your own heartbeat. The elevator descended with mechanical efficiency. 19 floors. 18. 17. On the 14th floor, the elevator stopped. The doors opened and Vivian Mercer stepped inside. For a moment, Ethan forgot how to breathe. He'd seen her before, of course, in company emails, in the lobby occasionally, once at a distance during an all-hands meeting where she'd talked about innovation and company values, while standing on a stage so far away she looked like a hologram. But never like this. Never 3 feet away in an elevator at nearly midnight on Christmas Eve. She looked tired. That was the first thing he noticed, not polished and perfect like in the corporate headshots. Her dark hair was pulled back messily, and she'd traded the usual designer suit for jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, but looked almost normal. She glanced at him briefly, the kind of look executives give lower-level employees, that flash of acknowledgement that doesn't quite register as seeing an actual person, and pressed the button for the parking garage. The elevator continued down in silence. Ethan tried not to stare, tried to blend into the corner like furniture. This was Vivian Mercer. The Vivian Mercer. 30 years old and already running a multi-billion-dollar tech corporation. Forbes had done a cover story on her last year. The woman who built an empire before 30. He'd seen it in a dentist's waiting room once, remembered the photos of her in sleek business attire, looking powerful and untouchable and completely certain of her place in the world. What was she doing here at midnight on Christmas Eve? The elevator reached the lobby. Ethan expected her to exit, to disappear into whatever luxury car was waiting for her, but instead she stayed put as the doors closed again and the elevator descended toward the parking garage. Then she spoke. "You're working late." Her voice was lower than he'd expected. Not cold exactly, but not warm either. Observational, factual. Ethan cleared his throat. Yes, ma'am. Last-minute project. On Christmas Eve? Emergency request from my supervisor. Something shifted in her expression. Subtle, hard to read. What department? Data analytics. 19th floor. She nodded slowly, like she was filing the information away somewhere. The elevator reached the parking garage. The doors opened onto harsh fluorescent lighting and rows of expensive cars, BMWs, Mercedes, one Tesla that gleamed under the lights like a spaceship. Vivian stepped out, then paused and looked back at him. What's your name? Ethan Cole, ma'am. Well, Ethan Cole, she said, and there was something strange in her eyes now, something he couldn't quite identify. Merry Christmas. Then she was gone, heels clicking across concrete, disappearing between the luxury vehicles. Ethan stood in the elevator, confused and unsettled, until the doors began to close. He jabbed the button for the parking garage at the last second and stepped out into the cold space. His car sat in the furthest corner, a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a dented passenger door and a muffler that rattled like a box of rocks. He'd parked it there deliberately, as far from the executive spaces as possible, as far from notice as possible. The engine coughed to life on the third try. Heat limped through the vents, barely warmer than the December air outside. Ethan checked his phone. 12:07 a.m., Christmas Day. He'd promised Lily he'd be home by midnight. The drive across the city took 25 minutes through empty streets lined with holiday lights. His neighborhood looked different than downtown, dimmer, more tired, with decorations that came from dollar stores instead of high-end boutiques. But people had tried. Strings of lights on apartment balconies, paper snowflakes in windows, a nativity scene made of plastic figures in front of the bodega on the corner. Ethan parked on the street and climbed 3 flights of stairs to apartment 4A. His legs felt like lead. His whole body ached with the kind of exhaustion that sleep didn't fix anymore. Mrs. Chen opened the door before he could knock. She waited for you, the old woman said quietly. Tried so hard to stay awake. Finally went down around 11. I'm sorry, the project ran late. You don't apologize to me. Mrs. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. You're doing your best, I know this, but Ethan, you can't keep going like this. You look like a ghost. He wanted to argue. Wanted to explain that he didn't have a choice, that this was what survival looked like, that he was doing everything humanly possible to keep them afloat. But the words stuck in his throat. Mrs. Chen patted his arm. I left soup in your fridge. Eat something and try to sleep. After she left, Ethan moved through the apartment in silence. It was small, just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, a living room that doubled as dining room and office space. The furniture was mostly secondhand. The paint was peeling in the corners. And despite his best efforts with plastic over the windows and rolled towels under the doors, cold air leaked in through every crack. He checked the thermostat, 58 degrees. He'd set it to 62 before leaving this morning. But the heat had been acting up lately, cutting out randomly, failing to hold temperature. He'd called the landlord twice, been told both times that someone would get to it when they could. Ethan turned the dial up to 65 and prayed it would listen. Then he walked quietly to Lily's room. She was asleep in her bed, curled under 2 blankets and still wearing her winter coat. Her breath made small clouds in the cold air. One small hand clutched her stuffed rabbit, the one Sarah had bought her before the hospital, before everything fell apart. Ethan's chest cracked open. He moved forward on autopilot, pulling the blankets higher around her shoulders, tucking them in carefully. His daughter's face looked peaceful in sleep. Innocent. Unaware that her father was slowly destroying himself to keep her safe, she stirred slightly. Daddy? Shh. I'm here, baby. Go back to sleep. Did you help Santa? The question hit him like a physical blow. He had to swallow twice before he could answer. Yeah, sweetheart. All done. Santa's good to go. Lily smiled without opening her eyes. Love you. Love you too. More than anything. He stayed there until her breathing evened out again, watching his daughter sleep in a freezing room in an apartment he could barely afford, and felt the weight of his failures pressing down like concrete. In the kitchen, he found the soup Mrs. Chen had left, homemade chicken broth with vegetables and noodles. He ate it standing up, barely tasting it, then walked to the window and stared out at the dark street below. Somewhere across the city, Vivian Mercer was probably in a penthouse apartment with heated floors and a view of the lake, sleeping soundly, untroubled by bills or broken heating or the reality of what it meant to be disposable. Ethan wondered if she'd even remember their brief conversation by tomorrow. He wondered if she knew, if any of them knew, what it was like down here at the bottom. 15 floors above the 19th floor office space, in an executive suite that most employees never saw, Vivian Mercer sat at her desk and couldn't shake the image of the man in the elevator. She'd almost missed him entirely, had been so lost in her own thoughts, frustration about the board pushing back on her ethics initiative, anger at another executive caught cooking numbers, exhaustion from 18-hour days trying to course-correct a company she'd inherited rather than built, that she'd barely registered his presence. But something about him had caught her attention. The way he'd looked. Not just tired, everyone looked tired in corporate America, but hollowed out. Like someone had scooped everything vital from inside him and left just enough to keep functioning. And he'd been there at midnight, on Christmas Eve, working on an emergency project. Vivian pulled up her laptop and logged into the company's employee database. It took 30 seconds to find him. Ethan Cole, age 32, data analyst, hired 6 years ago, currently supervised by Marcus Webb. She clicked through his file. Performance reviews. All meets expectations. No promotions in 3 years. Salary, $68,000 annually. In Chicago. With a child. Vivian sat back in her chair, feeling something uncomfortable twist in her gut. $68,000 in this city was barely survivable for a single person. For someone with a kid? It was drowning slowly. She clicked deeper into the records, pulling up project assignments. What she found made her jaw tighten. Ethan Cole had been lead analyst on 17 major projects in the past year. 17. The standard load was 4 to 6, and every single one had been marked as completed by Marcus Webb's team, with Marcus listed as primary contact for board presentations. She opened the file marked Q1 Financial Projections that had been submitted 20 minutes ago, 11:46 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Created by Ethan Cole. Submitted by Marcus Webb. Vivian's hands curled into fists. She'd been CEO for 2 years now, fighting constantly to reform a culture she'd inherited from her predecessor. Her father, who'd built the company on aggressive growth and competitive ruthlessness, and had died of a heart attack at 57 without ever learning his daughter's middle name. She'd tried. Implemented ethics training, pushed for work-life balance initiatives, increased base salaries across the board. But the rot went deep. Executives still played games with bonuses. Managers still exploited desperate workers. The machine still chewed people up and spit them out because that was what machines did. And she'd been too far removed to see it, too insulated in her executive suite with her assistant filtering problems and her PR team crafting narratives about innovation and employee empowerment. She'd become exactly what she'd sworn she wouldn't. Another wealthy CEO making speeches about values while workers like Ethan Cole missed Christmas with their children. Vivian pulled up Marcus Webb's file next. 46 years old, 15 years with the company. Supervisor of the data analytics team for 8 years. Salary, $240,000 plus performance bonuses. Last year's bonus, $180,000. She dug deeper, pulling up the metrics used to calculate that bonus. 17 successful project completions, high-value client presentations, positive board feedback, all of it built on work done by Ethan Cole, all of it stolen. The anger that rose in Vivian's chest was cold and precise. She'd seen this before, parasitic managers who climbed the ladder by standing on the backs of people too desperate or too kind to fight back. Her father had promoted dozens of them, called it leadership, called it getting results. She'd fired 3 in the past year alone. But for every one she removed, 2 more seemed to appear. The system was designed to reward this behavior, and Ethan Cole was drowning in it. Vivian checked the time, 12:43 a.m. Then she did something impulsive, something her board would have called reckless, something her assistant would have vetoed immediately if she'd been there to ask. She pulled up Ethan Cole's employee file and found his address. The knock on the door came at 1:47 a.m. Ethan jerked awake on the couch, heart hammering, disoriented. He'd fallen asleep still dressed, laptop open on the coffee table, one arm hanging off the cushion. The knock came again. Firmer this time. Ethan stumbled to his feet, brain foggy with exhaustion. His first thought was Mrs. Chen. Maybe something was wrong. Maybe she needed help. But Mrs. Chen wouldn't knock like that. Mrs. Chen had a key for emergencies. He checked the peephole and stopped breathing. Vivian Mercer stood in the hallway outside his apartment. For a moment, Ethan thought he was hallucinating. That exhaustion had finally broken his brain, and now he was seeing things. But no, she was real. Still in the jeans and sweater from earlier, looking uncomfortable and determined in equal measure. Ethan opened the door slowly, leaving the chain on. "Ms. Mercer?" "I need to talk to you," she said. "Can I come in?" Every instinct screamed that this was wrong. That billionaire CEOs didn't show up at employees' apartments at 2 in the morning. That this had to be some kind of test or trap. That he should politely decline and shut the door and hope to keep his job. But Ethan was too tired for instinct. He unhooked the chain and stepped back. Vivian walked inside, and Ethan watched her face change as she took in the apartment. The peeling paint, the secondhand furniture, the space heater running in the corner because the radiator had given up entirely around midnight. The stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter that he'd meant to hide but hadn't had energy for. The cold. Her eyes swept over everything with the kind of focus that made Ethan want to disappear. This was his life, his failure. All of it visible now under the harsh judgment of someone who probably spent more on coffee than he spent on groceries. "I'm sorry," he found himself saying. "I wasn't expecting... it's late. Can I get you something? Water? I think I have tea somewhere. How long has your heat been broken?" The question cut through his rambling, direct, demanding. Ethan's mouth opened and closed. It cuts out sometimes. Landlord's supposed to fix it." "How long, Ethan?" Something about the way she said his name, like she actually saw him as a person instead of a line item in a database, made the truth spill out. 3 weeks. But it's okay. We have the space heater and extra blankets. Lily's warm enough." Vivian's expression did something complicated. "Lily, your daughter." "Yes." "How old?" 7. Vivian walked to the kitchen counter and picked up the stack of bills before Ethan could stop her. He watched her flip through them, her face growing harder with each page. Electric bill, past due. Gas bill, final notice. Pediatrician, payment plan arrangement. Rent, due in 6 days. She set them down carefully. "What's your salary, Ethan?" Ms. Mercer, I don't think... "What's your salary?" $68,000. "And you've been with the company for 6 years." "Yes, ma'am." 3 years without a promotion. It wasn't a question. She already knew. Had probably looked up his entire file before coming here. Ethan felt exposed, raw. "I'm working on it. Marcus says I'm close to... Marcus is stealing from you." The words hung in the cold air between them. Ethan stared at her, not understanding. "What?" Vivian's voice was quiet but fierce. "I pulled the project files tonight. 17 major projects in the past year, all completed by you, all credited to Marcus Webb's team, all used to justify his $180,000 bonus, while you make $68,000 and can't afford to heat your apartment." The room tilted slightly. Ethan grabbed the counter for support. "That's..." He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't name what it was, couldn't process the information fast enough to form a response that made sense. Vivian kept talking, her words coming faster now, like a dam had broken. "He's been suppressing your promotions, blocking your raises, keeping you desperate and overworked so you can't leave and can't fight back. It's deliberate, Ethan, systematic. And I didn't know about it until tonight." Something hot and horrible was building in Ethan's chest. Something that felt like rage or grief, or maybe both at once. "Why are you here?" The question came out harsh, broken. "Why did you come to my apartment at 2 in the morning to tell me this? What do you want from me?" "I want to fix it." "You can't fix this." The words exploded out of him before he could stop them. "You can't fix 3 years of this. 3 years of working myself to death while my daughter sleeps in a cold apartment wearing her coat because we can't afford heat. 3 years of missing bedtimes and school plays and every single moment that matters. You can't just show up here and wave your hand and make it all okay. His voice cracked on the last word. His vision blurred. And then he was crying. Actually crying. Standing in his freezing kitchen in front of his billionaire CEO, while tears ran down his face and his whole body shook with exhaustion and rage, and 3 years of holding everything together finally breaking apart. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "I'm sorry. I can't." Vivian moved forward and did something that shocked him more than anything else that had happened tonight. She hugged him, not a polished corporate gesture, a real hug, fierce and tight and completely unexpected. "You have nothing to apologize for," she said quietly. "Nothing. Do you understand me?" Ethan couldn't answer, could barely breathe. He stood there in her arms, this stranger who was also his boss, this woman who lived in a completely different world, and let himself fall apart. When he finally pulled back, wiping his face roughly with his sleeve, Vivian was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. "I'm going to fix this," she said again, slower this time, more certain. "Not perfectly, not all at once, but I'm going to fix what I can. Starting tomorrow. Tomorrow's Christmas." "I know. There's no board meeting on Christmas." Something sharp flashed across Vivian's face. "There is now." She pulled out her phone and typed quickly, then showed him the screen. An email, sent to the entire executive board at 2:04 a.m. Emergency meeting, 9 a.m. Christmas Day. Non-negotiable. Attendance mandatory. Ethan stared at the message. "They're going to hate you for this." "They hate me already." Vivian tucked her phone away. "Get some sleep, Ethan, and keep your phone on tomorrow morning. You're going to want to hear what happens." She walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. "Your wife," she said quietly. "When did you lose her?" Ethan's throat closed. 3 years ago, cancer." Vivian nodded slowly. "I lost my father 2 years ago. Heart attack. We weren't close. Barely spoke the last 5 years of his life, but I keep thinking if I'd paid more attention, if I'd looked closer at what he was building instead of just inheriting it. Maybe I could have changed things before they got this broken." She looked back at him, and for just a moment Ethan saw past the CEO to the person underneath. Someone just as tired as him, just as lost. "I can't bring your wife back," Vivian said. "I can't give you the past 3 years, but I can make sure the next 3 are different, if you'll let me." Then she was gone. Ethan stood alone in his cold apartment, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway, and had absolutely no idea what the hell had just happened. He checked on Lily, still asleep, still clutching her rabbit, then walked to the window and stared out at the city. Somewhere out there, Vivian Mercer was planning to blow up Christmas morning with an emergency board meeting, planning to expose Marcus, planning to change everything. And Ethan didn't know whether to hope or to brace for impact. Maybe both. He pulled the stuffed butterfly out of his closet, Lily's Christmas present, wrapped in paper he'd salvaged from last year, and set it carefully under the small artificial tree in the corner, added the coloring book beside it. Then he sat on the couch and waited for dawn. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel like he was drowning. He felt like maybe, just maybe, someone had finally noticed he was underwater and thrown him a rope. Whether he could grab it, or whether it would slip through his frozen fingers, remained to be seen. But it was there, and that was something. Dawn came cold and gray through the apartment windows. Ethan hadn't slept. He'd tried around 3:30, sprawled on the couch with his eyes closed, but his brain refused to shut down. It kept replaying the impossible scene, Vivian Mercer in his kitchen, holding his unpaid bills, saying words like "stolen" and "fix it," like they were simple facts instead of grenades. By 6 a.m., he gave up pretending and made coffee. The cheap kind that tasted like burnt water but had enough caffeine to trick his body into functioning. He stood at the counter drinking it black, watching the sky lighten over the rooftops across the street, and tried to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do now. His phone sat on the counter like a live explosive. Vivian had said to keep it on, said he'd want to hear what happened at the board meeting she'd called for 9 a.m. on Christmas morning. Ethan still couldn't wrap his head around that part. Couldn't imagine the fury that email must have triggered. Executives dragged away from family brunches and present opening and whatever else billionaires did on holidays, all because some mid-level analyst they'd never heard of was drowning. Except it wasn't really about him, was it? It was about Marcus, about corruption, about a company culture that rewarded theft and called it performance. Ethan was just the evidence. A sound from Lily's room made him set down his coffee and move quickly down the short hallway. He found his daughter sitting up in bed, still wrapped in blankets, her face lit with the kind of joy that only 7-year-olds could manage at 6 in the morning on Christmas. "Daddy, you're home!" The words hit him square in the chest. Like being home was a surprise, like it was something special instead of the bare minimum requirement of being a father. "Of course I'm home, baby. It's Christmas." Lily launched herself out of bed and wrapped her arms around his waist, squeezing tight. She smelled like kid shampoo and sleep and something indefinably sweet that made Ethan's throat close up. "Can we open presents now, please?" Ethan glanced at the clock, 6:17 a.m. "How about we make breakfast first? Pancakes? With chocolate chips? I'll check if we have any." They didn't, but Ethan found some ancient sprinkles in the back of the cupboard, left over from Sarah's birthday cake 3 years ago. Probably stale, definitely questionable, and Lily declared them even better than chocolate chips. They made pancakes together in the tiny kitchen, Lily standing on a chair to help stir while Ethan worked the griddle. The space heater hummed in the corner, fighting a losing battle against the cold seeping through the walls. Lily didn't complain. She'd stopped mentioning the cold weeks ago. Around the same time, she'd stopped asking why Daddy was never home for dinner. Kids adapted. That was the horrible thing. They learned to expect less and call it normal. After breakfast, pancakes that were mostly sprinkles and tasted like sugary cardboard but made Lily grin like he'd served her a feast, they moved to the living room. Ethan watched his daughter's face as she spotted the 2 wrapped presents under the tree, and something in him fractured. 2 presents, that was all he could give her. 2 small gifts that cost maybe $30 total. Sarah would have filled the space under that tree, would have stayed up late wrapping things in elaborate paper with bows and ribbons, would have made Christmas feel magical instead of desperately small. But Sarah was gone, and Ethan was doing his best. And his best looked like this: a stuffed butterfly and a coloring book in a cold apartment while his daughter pretended not to notice how little there was. Lily opened the butterfly first. Her whole face transformed. "Daddy, it's the one from the store, the one I showed you. You remembered that? You remember everything I show you." She said it like a fact, like trust was still something simple and unbreakable. Ethan had to look away, blinking hard. Lily hugged the butterfly to her chest, then opened the coloring book, one of those thick ones with complicated designs meant for older kids, because Lily was careful and patient and liked to spend hours on single pages, making everything perfect. "This is the best Christmas ever," she said seriously. And Ethan wanted to scream. Wanted to tell her that this wasn't what best looked like, that best was heat that worked, and presents that filled the room, and a father who came home before bedtime, that she deserved so much more than what he could give her. But he just pulled her close and held on tight. "I'm glad you liked them, baby." They spent the next hour coloring together. Lily sprawled on the floor with her new book, while Ethan sat on the couch pretending to work on a design with her, but mostly just watching his daughter exist. Happy, safe, unaware that her father's entire world might be about to shift. At 8:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. Ethan's stomach dropped. He grabbed it too fast, nearly fumbling it onto the floor. A text from an unknown number. "This is Vivian. Meeting starts in 13 minutes. I'll call you after." Ethan stared at the message. She'd called it an emergency meeting. Mandatory attendance. On Christmas morning. For him. Well, not for him. For the truth. For justice, or accountability, or whatever corporate term they used for dragging corruption into daylight. But it felt personal anyway. "Daddy, you okay?" Lily was watching him with those big eyes that noticed everything. Ethan forced a smile. "Yeah, sweetie, just a work thing, nothing important." "On Christmas?" The question was innocent, curious, but it landed like an accusation. "Sometimes work doesn't care about holidays," Ethan said quietly. Then, Because he couldn't help himself, because the weight of 3 years was crushing him, and Lily was the only person in the world he could be honest with. But it should. It really should. Lily nodded like she understood, then went back to her coloring. Ethan watched the clock tick forward. 8:51, 8:56, 9:02. Somewhere across the city, in a boardroom he'd never seen, Vivian Mercer was walking into a room full of angry executives and starting a war. The call came at 10:17 a.m. Ethan answered on the first ring. "Hello?" "It's done." Vivian's voice sounded tight, exhausted. "Marcus is fired, effective immediately. I've launched a full investigation into the analytics department and flagged 6 other supervisors for review. The board fought me on every single point, but I didn't give them a choice." Ethan couldn't speak, couldn't process the words fast enough. "Ethan? You there?" Yeah. There's more." A pause. "I'm offering you a position. Senior Director of Data Analytics. $140,000 salary to start. Full benefits. Flexible hours. You'll build your own team and report directly to the VP of Operations instead of going through a supervisor. It's yours if you want it." The apartment tilted. Ethan sat down hard on the couch. $140,000. More than double what he made now. Enough to afford heat. Enough to buy groceries without calculating every item. Enough to maybe, possibly, start living like a normal person instead of someone constantly drowning. "I don't..." His voice came out strangled. "Why would you do this?" "Because you earned it 3 years ago. Because the company owes you for every project Marcus stole credit for. Because you're raising a daughter alone in a freezing apartment on $68,000, and that's not right. Pick whichever reason works for you." Ethan pressed his palm against his eyes. His whole body was shaking. "I don't know if I can do this job. Senior Director, that's leadership. That's people depending on me. What if I screw it up?" "Then you'll screw it up and we'll figure it out." Vivian's voice softened slightly. "Ethan, you've been doing the work of an entire team for 3 years. You can handle this, and you won't be alone. I'm making sure of that. The board must hate you right now. They hate me every day. This is nothing new." A sound like papers rustling. "Take the weekend. Think about it. But I need an answer by Monday morning." "I don't need the weekend." Silence on the other end. "I'll take it," Ethan said. "The position. I'll take it." He heard Vivian exhale, a sound that might have been relief or satisfaction or just exhaustion. "Good. I'll have HR send over the paperwork. You start January 2nd. That gives you a week to sort out logistics." After she hung up, Ethan sat on the couch, staring at nothing while his brain tried to catch up with reality. Senior Director. $140,000. Flexible hours. His daughter could have heat, could have food that wasn't rationed, could have a father who came home before midnight. It felt too big, too sudden, like a door opening onto a life he'd stopped believing was possible. "Daddy?" Lily was standing in front of him, holding her butterfly, looking worried. Ethan pulled her onto his lap and hugged her so tight she squeaked. "Good news, baby. Really good news. Daddy got a new job." "Does that mean more emergencies?" The question cracked him open. Because of course that's what she'd think, that more responsibility meant less of him. That's all she'd ever known. "No," Ethan said fiercely. "It means less emergencies. It means I get to come home for dinner. It means we can fix the heat and maybe get a bigger place, and I get to actually be here with you instead of always working." Lily pulled back to look at his face, searching for the truth. "Really? Really?" She hugged him again, and Ethan closed his eyes and let himself believe it. The rest of Christmas Day passed in a blur of simple things that felt extraordinary because, for once, Ethan wasn't drowning in exhaustion. They watched a movie, one of the old animated ones Lily loved, about animals learning to be a family. They made grilled cheese for lunch, they built a blanket fort in the living room, and Lily insisted he crawl inside with her, both of them cramped in the small space, laughing when the fort collapsed. Normal things. Parent and child things. Things Ethan had been too tired to do for 3 years. Around 4 p.m., Mrs. Chen knocked and invited them down for dinner. She'd made enough food for a small army: roast chicken, vegetables, rice, soup that smelled like comfort. Her apartment was warm and cluttered and full of photos of grandchildren who lived too far away to visit. "You look different," she said to Ethan while Lily played with a puzzle in the corner. "Less like a ghost." "I got a promotion. Big one. Starts next week." Mrs. Chen studied his face. "You're scared." It wasn't a question. Ethan nodded. "What if I can't handle it? What if they realize they made a mistake?" "Then you'll handle that too." Mrs. Chen patted his hand. "You've been handling impossible things for years. This will be easier. Trust me." But trust felt like a luxury Ethan couldn't afford. Trust meant letting his guard down, meant believing things could actually get better. And every time he'd done that before, the universe had proven him wrong. Sarah getting sick, the medical bills, the funeral costs, 3 years of Marcus stealing his work while promising promotions that never came. Why would this be different? That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan's phone rang again. Unknown number. His heart jumped before he realized it wasn't Vivian's number from earlier. He answered cautiously. "Hello? Ethan Cole?" A man's voice, smooth, professional. "This is David Reeves. I'm VP of Operations at Mercer Tech. Vivian asked me to reach out." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "Okay. I wanted to introduce myself before you start next week. You'll be reporting directly to me, and I wanted to make sure you know what you're walking into." "Am I walking into a problem?" Reeves laughed, a genuine sound, not corporate polished. "You're walking into a mess. The analytics department has been hemorrhaging talent for years because of exactly the kind of situation you experienced. We need someone who actually understands the work to rebuild it. That's you." "I don't have leadership experience." "You have 3 years of doing the impossible with no support and no recognition. That's better than experience. That's survival. And survival skills matter more than an MBA when you're trying to fix something broken." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. "Look," Reeves continued, "Vivian doesn't do things halfway. When she commits to fixing something, she goes all in. But she's also realistic. Nobody expects you to have all the answers on day one. You'll have support, budget for hiring, authority to make changes. And if you need help, you ask. That's the job." "What if I fail?" "Then you fail forward, you learn, you adjust." "But Ethan, I've read your project files. I've seen the quality of work you produced under conditions that should have made quality impossible. You're not going to fail. You're going to be pissed off at how much easier this is when you actually have resources." After Reeves hung up, Ethan sat in the dark apartment feeling untethered. Like gravity had stopped working and he was floating without direction. He pulled up his bank account on his phone, a habit from 3 years of checking balances before every purchase. The numbers glowed back at him. $247.63 until next payday. Enough for groceries if he was careful. Not enough for the gas bill. Definitely not enough for the rent due in 4 days. But next week? Next week that would change. Next week he'd have a paycheck that could actually cover bills with money left over. Next week he could buy Lily new clothes that fit instead of waiting for hand-me-downs from Mrs. Chen's distant relatives. Next week the heat could stay on all month. Next week felt like a different lifetime. Ethan walked to Lily's room and stood in the doorway watching her sleep. She'd kicked off one blanket but was still curled tight under the other, her new butterfly clutched against her chest. "I'm gonna do better," he whispered into the dark. "I'm gonna be better. I promise." The words felt like a vow, like something he was carving into stone so he couldn't back out later when things got hard. He went to bed that night still dressed, on top of the covers, and dreamed about Sarah. In the dream, they were in their old apartment, the one they'd rented before Lily was born, before cancer, before everything fell apart. Sarah was cooking something that smelled like cinnamon. She turned and smiled at him, and Ethan felt his chest crack open because he'd forgotten what her smile looked like in real life. Not in photos, in motion. "You're doing okay," she said in the dream. "You're doing better than okay." "I'm barely holding on." That's what okay looks like sometimes. Barely holding on until things get better. What if they don't get better? What if this is just another thing that falls apart? Sarah walked over and touched his face. Her hand felt warm, real. Then you hold on through that too. But Ethan, you have to let yourself hope. You have to let good things happen without waiting for them to turn bad. He woke up at 3 a.m. with tears on his face and Sarah's voice still echoing in his head. The apartment was freezing. The space heater had shut off again. Overloaded circuit, probably. Ethan got up and reset it, then stood at the window watching the empty street below. 4 days until rent was due. 6 days until he started the new job. 1 week until everything changed. He just had to hold on that long. The weekend crawled by in a strange suspension between his old life and whatever came next. Saturday, Ethan took Lily to the public library, free entertainment, warm building, and let her check out a stack of books so tall she could barely carry them. Sunday, they stayed in and read together while Ethan tried not to think about the gas bill or the landlord or the fact that his entire future hung on a promise from a woman he'd met once in an elevator. Monday morning came gray and bitter cold. Ethan woke to 17 missed calls and a voicemail from Marcus Webb. His hands shook as he played it. "You piece of shit!" Marcus's voice was slurred. Drunk or just furious, hard to tell. "You went crying to Mercer? You got me fired? After everything I did for you, I gave you opportunities. I gave you projects. I made you relevant. And this is how you repay me?" The voicemail devolved into cursing. Threats that were probably too vague to be actionable but still made Ethan's skin crawl. He deleted it and blocked the number, then sat on the edge of his bed feeling sick. Marcus was wrong. He hadn't gone to Vivian, hadn't asked for anything. She'd shown up. She'd found the truth on her own. But it didn't matter. Marcus would hate him anyway. Would probably tell everyone who'd listened that Ethan was a backstabber, a rat, someone who couldn't handle the pressure and went running to management. The corporate machine protected its own, even when they were corrupt, even when they were wrong. Ethan almost called Vivian to back out, to say he'd made a mistake, that he couldn't handle the politics, that maybe it was better to just find a different job somewhere else and disappear. But then Lily came padding out of her room in mismatched socks and pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and asked what was for breakfast. And Ethan thought about Sarah's dream voice saying, "Let yourself hope." So he made breakfast instead of running, made toast and eggs with the last of the groceries, helped Lily get dressed for a playdate at Mrs. Chen's, walked her downstairs and hugged her goodbye. Then he went back to his apartment and waited for rent day like a condemned man waiting for execution. Tuesday came. The landlord knocked at 8 a.m. sharp. Ethan opened the door and handed over a check for $1,450. Every dollar he had left plus $50 borrowed from Mrs. Chen with promises to pay her back next week. The landlord looked at the check, then at Ethan. "Heat still broken?" "You said you'd send someone." "I said I'd try. It's the holidays. Nobody wants to work." "It's been 3 weeks." The landlord shrugged. "I'll make some calls." No promises. After he left, Ethan stood in his apartment, paid for another month but still freezing, and felt the absurdity of it all crash over him. He was 4 days away from a 6-figure salary, and he still couldn't afford to fix his own heat, still dependent on a landlord who didn't care if his daughter slept in a coat. Nothing had actually changed yet. He was still the same broke, desperate person he'd been on Christmas Eve. The promotion was just a promise, and promises broke all the time. Wednesday, Ethan's phone rang. "Vivian. HR says you haven't signed the paperwork yet." Ethan closed his eyes. "I've been busy." "Ethan. What if this doesn't work? What if I take this job and screw it up, and then I've burned the bridge back to what I had before?" "What you had before was exploitation. You don't want that bridge. At least it was stable." "It was killing you." Vivian's voice went quiet, serious. "I saw your apartment. I saw your bills. I saw your daughter sleeping in a coat. That's not stability. That's drowning in slow motion." Ethan's throat closed. "Sign the paperwork," Vivian said. "Come to the office Friday for orientation. Meet your team. See what you're actually walking into before you make up your mind to run. And if I still want to run after that, then I'll accept your resignation and help you find something else. But Ethan, you're running from the wrong thing. You're running from hope because you're scared it'll hurt when it goes away. I get that. But you can't live like that. Nobody can." She hung up before he could respond. Ethan sat on his couch staring at the email from HR with the employment contract attached. 23 pages of legal language outlining salary, benefits, responsibilities, terms of employment. He clicked it open and started reading. 2 hours later, he signed it. Sent it back to HR with hands that shook so badly he almost couldn't hit send. Then he called Mrs. Chen and asked if she could watch Lily on Friday. He had orientation. "Of course," Mrs. Chen said. "This is good, Ethan. This is very good." Friday morning, Ethan put on the one decent suit he owned, bought for Sarah's funeral, worn to exactly 3 job interviews since then, and took the train downtown. The corporate building looked different in daylight, less menacing, just glass and steel like 1,000 other buildings. He checked in at the lobby and received a visitor badge that said Ethan Cole, Senior Director. The title felt like a joke, like something he was wearing as a costume. The elevator ride to the executive floors was packed with people in expensive clothes talking about holiday vacations and year-end bonuses. Ethan stood in the corner and tried to breathe normally. Vivian met him outside the elevator on the 15th floor. She looked different, too. Back in the tailored suit and polished appearance, CEO mode. But when she saw him, something in her face softened. "You came. You said to come." "I also said a lot of things people ignore." She gestured down the hallway. "Come on, I'll show you your office before we do the official tour." She led him through corridors lined with glass-walled offices and conference rooms, past administrative assistants who glanced up curiously as they passed. Finally, she stopped at a corner office with windows overlooking the city. "This is yours." Ethan stepped inside and couldn't quite process what he was seeing. A real desk, a real chair, space for a computer and files and all the tools he'd need, windows that let in actual daylight. "The 19th floor doesn't have offices like this," he said. "The 19th floor is getting renovated. I'm fixing a lot of things." Ethan walked to the window and looked out at Chicago spread below him. Somewhere out there was his apartment, his daughter, his old life. And here was the new one, waiting. "What if I can't do this?" The question came out smaller than he meant it. Vivian came to stand beside him. "Then you'll learn. But Ethan, I didn't offer you this position because I felt sorry for you. I offered it because you're good at what you do, because you care about quality even when nobody's watching, because you kept showing up even when the system was designed to break you. Those are the things that matter, not whether you've managed a team before." Marcus is telling people I'm a rat. Marcus is unemployed and currently being investigated for fraud. I wouldn't worry about his opinion. Ethan turned to look at her. Really look at her. This woman who'd shown up at his apartment at 2 in the morning and decided to blow up her own Christmas to fix a broken system. "Why did you really do this?" he asked. "The truth." Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard it before. "Because I inherited a company built on my father's ruthlessness, and I've spent 2 years trying to fix it from the top down. But I was so far removed I couldn't see what was actually happening to people. I couldn't see you freezing in your apartment or working yourself to death on Christmas Eve. And when I did finally see it, I realized I had a choice. I could write it off as one bad supervisor in one department, or I could treat it like the system-wide failure it actually is. So I chose the second one, and you were the proof I needed that the system was broken. I'm just one person. You're not, though. There are dozens of people like you in this company, people being exploited, people barely surviving. I can't fix all of it overnight, but I can start, and I'm starting with you." Something shifted in Ethan's chest. Not trust exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. "Okay," he said. "Show me what I'm walking into." Vivian smiled, a real smile, not the corporate version, and led him out of the office. The next 3 hours were a blur of introductions and information. David Reeves walked him through the analytics department structure. HR explained benefits and policies. 3 analysts who'd be on his team sat down with him in a conference room and talked about projects and challenges and what they actually needed from leadership. By noon, Ethan's head was spinning, but underneath the overwhelm, something else was building. These people wanted to do good work. They were tired of being blocked by management, tired of having their ideas ignored, tired of watching quality suffer because nobody cared about anything except quarterly numbers. They wanted what Ethan wanted, to actually matter, to build things that worked, to be treated like humans instead of resources. He could do this. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not immediately. But he could try, and trying was more than he'd been allowed to do for 3 years. When orientation finally ended, Vivian walked him back to the elevator. "You start Monday," she said. "Real start. No more orientations, just work. I'll be here. I know you will." She paused. "Ethan, I meant what I said. You're not alone in this. If you need help, ask. That's not weakness. That's how this is supposed to work." The elevator arrived. Ethan stepped inside, then turned back. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing me, for caring, for all of it." Vivian nodded once. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've survived your first month." The elevator doors closed and Ethan rode down to the lobby in silence. When he stepped outside, the December air hit him like a slap. But for once, the cold didn't feel like punishment. It felt like the space between one life and the next. Ethan pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Chen. "How's Lily?" "Good. We made cookies. She wants to save some for you. Tell her I'm coming home early. Tell her we're going out for dinner tonight, somewhere nice." "Ethan, can you afford—" "I'll afford it." His voice cracked. "Just this once. I want to take my daughter somewhere nice." They went to a diner 3 blocks from the apartment. Not fancy, but warm and bright with red vinyl booths and a menu that didn't require calculating every item. Lily ordered pancakes for dinner, her favorite rule-breaking meal, and ate them with syrup dripping down her chin while she told Ethan about the cookies she'd made with Mrs. Chen. And Ethan sat across from his daughter in a warm booth eating mediocre food that tasted like victory and let himself believe that maybe things really could get better, that maybe hope wasn't a trap, that maybe he was allowed to stop drowning and start living. Outside the diner windows, snow began to fall, soft and quiet, covering the city in white. Lily pressed her face to the glass and watched it come down, and Ethan watched her, and for the first time in 3 years he felt something other than exhaustion. He felt ready. Monday arrived with the kind of January cold that made Chicago feel like punishment. Ethan stood outside the Mercer Tech building at 7:45 a.m., coffee in one hand and his old laptop bag in the other, trying to convince his legs to move toward the entrance. His first day as senior director. His first day leading people instead of just surviving them. His first day proving he belonged here, or confirming he didn't. The lobby was already busy with employees swiping badges and heading to elevators. Ethan joined the flow, his new badge feeling heavy in his pocket. When he pulled it out at the security turnstile, the guard glanced at it and nodded him through without the usual visitor screening. He was employee now, not guest. The elevator ride to 15 felt longer than it had on Friday. 2 executives got on at the 3rd floor, discussing acquisition targets in voices that assumed everyone around them was either unimportant or invisible. Ethan kept his eyes on the floor numbers and tried not to think about how he used to be the invisible one. His office looked exactly the same as Friday. Empty desk, bare walls, windows overlooking a city that hadn't changed just because his job title had. But someone had left a laptop and access credentials on the desk, along with a note in Vivian's handwriting. "Staff meeting at 9. Conference room C. Don't be late. V." Ethan set down his coffee and logged into the laptop. His email inbox loaded with 247 unread messages, automatic system notifications, welcome emails from HR, 3 messages from David Reeves about budget approvals, and 1 from an analyst named Jennifer Park with the subject line, "Thank God you're here." He opened that one first. "Mr. Cole, I know you start today and probably have a million things happening, but I wanted to reach out before the staff meeting. A bunch of us on the team have been watching projects fail for 2 years because nobody in leadership actually understands the work. We're hoping you're different. We're hoping you actually care. Please don't prove us wrong." Jennifer Ethan read it 3 times, feeling the weight of expectation settle onto his shoulders like wet concrete. These people were desperate for competent leadership, the same way he'd been desperate for recognition. They'd been let down before. They were bracing for disappointment. He typed back, "Jennifer, I'm going to screw things up sometimes because I'm new at this, but I promise I'll care, and I promise I'll listen. That's all I've got right now. Ethan." He hit send before he could second-guess the informality. The next 2 hours were a crash course in administrative chaos, password resets, system access requests, email chains about ongoing projects he knew nothing about, a facilities request form for office furniture, a reminder about mandatory sexual harassment training, a survey about workplace satisfaction that felt darkly ironic given everything. At 8:57, Ethan grabbed his laptop and headed for conference room C. He found it easily. Glass walls, long table, 12 chairs already occupied by people who stopped talking the moment he walked in. They all looked young, tired, wary. Jennifer Park was easy to identify, mid-20s, dark hair in a ponytail, wearing a Mercer Tech hoodie that had seen better days. She met his eyes and gave a tiny nod. Ethan took the seat at the head of the table and immediately felt like an imposter. "Hi," he said. "I'm Ethan Cole. I know most of you don't know me, and you're probably wondering what qualifies me to run this department when I was doing mid-level analysis work 2 weeks ago." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Nobody disagreed. Honest answer? I don't know if I'm qualified, but I know what it's like to work under bad leadership. I know what it's like to do good work and watch someone else take credit. And I know what it's like to care about quality when the system only cares about speed. He paused, looking around the table. So here's what I'm asking. Give me 60 days. If I'm making things worse, tell me. If I'm missing something important, tell me. If you need support I'm not providing, tell me. I can't fix problems I don't know about, and I can't lead people who won't be honest with me. A guy in his 30s with glasses and a beard spoke up. What happened to Marcus Webb? He was fired. I didn't ask for it, but I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry about it either. Because he was stealing your work? Ethan met the guy's eyes. Because he was exploiting people and calling it management. If anyone else on this team is dealing with something like that, I want to know. That's not how we're operating anymore. The room stayed quiet, but something in the atmosphere shifted. Not trust yet, but maybe the possibility of it. Jennifer spoke next. We've got 3 major projects running behind schedule because the previous director kept pulling people off them for executive pet projects. How do we prioritize? Show me the projects and we'll figure it out together. What else? The questions came faster after that. Budget concerns, resource allocation, client expectations that didn't match reality, technical debt nobody had time to address. Ethan took notes and tried not to drown in the scope of problems he'd inherited. By the time the meeting ended at 10:30, his head was pounding. But he'd gotten everyone's contact information and a working list of the top 5 fires that needed immediate attention. Jennifer lingered after the others left. That was different, she said. Different good or different bad? Different like you didn't spend an hour telling us how great you are and how lucky we should feel. So, good. Ethan managed a tired smile. I'm going to need help. A lot of help. I hope that's okay. It's better than okay. It's a relief. Jennifer hesitated. Can I ask you something? What happened with Marcus? Everyone's heard different versions. Ethan chose his words carefully. He was taking credit for work other people did, blocking promotions to keep people desperate. The CEO found out and ended it. That's all I can really say. Were you one of the people he was blocking? Yeah? Jennifer nodded slowly. Half the team thought you were brought in from outside, corporate hire, someone's nephew. Finding out you were stuck on 19 doing the work nobody saw makes a lot more sense. Does it help, knowing that? Yeah, it helps. After she left, Ethan sat alone in the conference room and stared at his notes. 5 major problems. 12 people looking to him for answers. A CEO who expected results. A board that probably still thought promoting him was a mistake. No pressure. His phone buzzed. Vivian, how'd the first meeting go? Still employed. Taking that as a win? Good. Lunch tomorrow? I want to check in. Ethan stared at the message. Lunch with the CEO. Like that was normal. Sure. Where? My office. 12:30. I'll order in. The rest of the day was a blur of meeting people, learning systems, and trying to figure out what a senior director was actually supposed to do with his time. By 6 p.m., Ethan's brain felt like scrambled eggs. But when he checked his watch and realized he could actually leave, could go home at a reasonable hour, the relief was staggering. He packed his laptop, grabbed his coat, and headed for the elevator. On the ride down, he pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Chen. I'll be home by 6:30. Can I pick up Lily? The response came immediately. She's doing homework. Come get her whenever. Ethan stepped out into the January cold and realized he was smiling. Home by 6:30 on a Monday. To have dinner with his daughter while it was still light outside. 3 weeks ago, that would have been impossible. He picked up Lily from Mrs. Chen's apartment and found his daughter at the kitchen table, hunched over math worksheets with fierce concentration. Hey, baby! Lily's head snapped up. Daddy, you're early! The way she said it, like early was a miracle, made Ethan's chest hurt. New job means better hours. How's homework? Hard. I don't get subtraction when there's borrowing. Ethan sat down beside her and looked at the worksheet. Okay, let's figure it out together. They spent 20 minutes working through problems, Lily's frustration gradually shifting to understanding. When she finally got one right on her own, she grinned so wide Ethan thought his heart might crack. I did it. You did. I'm proud of you. Can we have dinner at home tonight? The question caught him off guard. You want to eat here? I thought you liked going to the diner. I do, but I like it here too, with you. So they made spaghetti together in the tiny kitchen, jar sauce and boxed pasta, nothing fancy, and ate at the small table while Lily told him about school, about her friend Emma, who brought fancy lunches, about the art project they were starting next week, about normal 7-year-old things that Ethan had been too exhausted to hear about for months. After dinner, they did more homework together, then bath time, then stories before bed, 3 chapters of a book about a mouse who solved mysteries. When Lily finally fell asleep, Ethan stayed in her doorway watching her breathe. The space heater hummed in the corner. The apartment was still too cold, still too small, still too broken. But for the first time in years, Ethan had been present for the evening routine, had eaten dinner with his kid, had helped with homework and done bath time and read stories, had been a father instead of just a man working himself to death. The difference felt enormous. Tuesday brought new problems. A project deadline that had been moved up without anyone telling the team. A client complained about data quality that turned out to be valid. An analyst who'd been working 60-hour weeks and was on the verge of quitting. Ethan spent the morning putting out fires and the afternoon trying to build systems so the same fires wouldn't start again. At 12:30, he headed to Vivian's office with a notebook full of questions and a growing sense that he was in way over his head. Vivian's assistant waved him through without making him wait. The office beyond was huge, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than Ethan's annual salary. But Vivian had pushed most of it aside to set up lunch on a small table by the windows. Thai food, still in takeout containers. Hope you like spicy, she said, gesturing to a chair. I ordered from my usual place. Ethan sat down, feeling underdressed in his department store suit next to her designer everything. How's week 1? Vivian asked, serving him pad thai. Overwhelming. I spent 2 hours this morning trying to figure out why our data pipeline keeps failing and another hour convincing someone not to quit. Did it work? The convincing? I think so. I promised him better support and fewer emergencies. Hope I can deliver. Vivian nodded. You will. It takes time. Everyone keeps saying that, but I've got projects due next week and clients expecting results and a team that's barely holding on. So delegate. That's what directors do. I don't know how to delegate without feeling like I'm dumping work on people the way Marcus dumped it on me. Vivian set down her fork and looked at him seriously. Delegation isn't dumping. Dumping is giving someone work without support or resources and blaming them when it fails. Delegation is giving someone work they're capable of, providing what they need to succeed, and trusting them to do it. You know the difference because you've experienced both. Ethan absorbed that. What if I choose wrong? What if I delegate something and the person can't handle it? Then you adjust, give them help or reassign it. But Ethan, you can't do everything yourself. That's how you ended up working Christmas Eve in a freezing office. The memory stung. Yeah. They ate in silence for a moment. Outside the windows, Chicago stretched out gray and massive. Can I ask you something? Ethan said finally. Why do you eat lunch in your office instead of going out? Vivian's expression shifted, something almost vulnerable crossing her face. Because I don't have anyone to go out with. The executives hate me for pushing ethics reforms. The board thinks I'm too idealistic, and everyone else is too scared of me to be honest. I'm not scared of you. You were. Christmas Eve. In the elevator. That was different. You were a stranger who happened to be the CEO. Now you're... Ethan stopped, not sure how to finish the sentence. I'm what? The person who showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m. and decided my life mattered. That's different from scary. Vivian looked away, and Ethan realized with surprise that she was uncomfortable with gratitude. I did what anyone should have done, she said quietly. But you're the only one who did it. They finished lunch talking about smaller things, books they'd read, shows Lily liked, the weather. Normal conversation that felt strange because of the context, but comfortable because both of them were tired of performing. When Ethan left at 1:30 to head back to his desk, Vivian called after him. Same time next week? Ethan turned back. Lunch? If you want. I figure we're both eating alone anyway. Might as well be alone together. Something about the phrasing made Ethan smile. Yeah, okay. The rest of January blurred past in a chaos of learning curves and small victories. Ethan hired 2 new analysts to fill gaps in the team, restructured the project timeline to something actually achievable, started weekly one-on-ones with each team member to catch problems before they exploded. It wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, missed a deadline because he'd underestimated complexity, had to redo a client presentation 3 times before it met standards, stayed late twice when he'd promised himself he wouldn't. But he also made it to Lily's school art show, took her to the library every Saturday, had dinner at home most nights, and every Tuesday he had lunch with Vivian. They fell into a rhythm without discussing it. She'd order food, different cuisine every week, and they'd eat in her office talking about work problems and life problems, and sometimes nothing important at all. She told him about growing up with a father who measured love in quarterly earnings. He told her about Sarah and the terrible year when cancer had stolen everything. Do you still miss her? Vivian asked one Tuesday in late January. Ethan thought about it. Yeah, but it's different now. Less like drowning, more like an ache. I can breathe around it. When did that change? I don't know, somewhere between working myself to death and actually having space to think. When you're in survival mode, you don't process grief. You just bury it and keep moving. Vivian nodded slowly. I buried my relationship with my father for 15 years. Told myself I'd fix it later. Then he died, and later never came. Do you regret it? Every day. But I'm trying to do better now, trying to build something he would have hated, a company that doesn't eat people alive. Is it working? Some days. Other days I feel like I'm rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Ethan laughed despite himself. That's dark. It's honest. By mid-February, Ethan's team had completed 2 major projects ahead of schedule and under budget. The client feedback was strong. The board noticed. David Reeves sent Ethan an email with just 3 words. Keep it up. And for the first time since taking the position, Ethan started to believe he might actually be good at this. Then Marcus Webb showed up outside the building. It was a Thursday evening, just past 6. Ethan was leaving the office when he spotted Marcus leaning against a car in the parking garage. He looked worse than Ethan remembered. Unshaven, rumpled, the kind of worn down that came from anger with nowhere to go. Ethan's first instinct was to turn around and go back inside, but Marcus had already seen him. Cole. Marcus pushed off the car and walked over. We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't care what you think. You destroyed my career. The least you can do is hear me out. Ethan's pulse kicked up. The parking garage was mostly empty. No witnesses, no security cameras in this corner. I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself. By doing my job? By managing a team the way every manager manages? By stealing credit and blocking promotions and exploiting people who couldn't fight back? Marcus's face twisted. You self-righteous piece of... You think you're better than me? You think you earned that director position? You got it because you cried to Mercer, because you played the victim. I didn't ask for anything. She investigated and found the truth. She found what she wanted to find, a story that made her look good. Poor exploited worker rescued by heroic CEO. You're a PR stunt, Cole. And when she's done with you, you'll be right back where you started. The words hit harder than they should have. Hit the fear Ethan had been carrying since Christmas. "You need to leave," Ethan said, keeping his voice level. "If you have a problem with the company's decision, take it up with HR. HR isn't going to help me. Nobody's going to help me. I'm 46 years old with a firing on my record and no references. Do you understand what you've done?" "I understand what you did. For years. To me and probably dozens of other people. I'm sorry you're struggling, but I'm not sorry you're gone." Marcus stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could smell alcohol on his breath. "You're going to regret this." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." Before Ethan could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Webb." They both turned. Vivian was standing 20 feet away, phone in hand, expression cold. "I've just called security," she said calmly. "You have 60 seconds to leave this property before you're arrested for trespassing." Marcus looked between them, jaw working. For a moment, Ethan thought he might actually do something violent, but then Marcus turned and walked back to his car without another word. They watched him drive away in silence. "You okay?" Vivian asked finally. Ethan realized his hands were shaking. "Yeah, just wasn't expecting that." "How long was he waiting?" "I don't know. He was already here when I came out." Vivian's expression hardened. "I'm filing a restraining order. This isn't acceptable." "He's just angry. He'll cool off." "Maybe, but I'm not taking chances." She looked at him seriously. "Ethan, he's not wrong about one thing. You did change his life, and people don't always handle that rationally." "You think he's dangerous?" "I think he's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things." They walked together to the visitor parking. Vivian had apparently been leaving around the same time and spotted them from across the garage. Her car was a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Ethan's entire apartment. "Thank you," Ethan said, "for showing up." "You don't have to thank me for basic decency." "I do when most people wouldn't bother." Vivian unlocked her car, then paused. "Do you have plans this weekend?" The question caught Ethan off guard. Library with Lily on Saturday." "Why?" "I was thinking about the heat in your apartment. It's February. Still broken?" Ethan's face heated. "Landlord's been dodging my calls." "I know a contractor. He owes me a favor. I can have him look at it Saturday if you want." "Vivian, I can't afford—" "It's a favor, not a bill. And before you argue, think about Lily sleeping in a coat for another month." The mention of his daughter cut through Ethan's pride. "Okay, yeah, thank you. Text me your address. He'll be there Saturday morning." She drove away before Ethan could second-guess accepting help. Saturday morning, a contractor named Paul showed up at 9 a.m. with tools and an easy competence that made Ethan feel useless. He spent 2 hours taking apart the radiator system, muttering about code violations and incompetent repairs. "Your landlord's been patching this instead of fixing it," Paul said finally. "Whole system needs replacing. I can do it, but it'll take most of the day." "How much?" Vivian said she's covering it. "No, I need to know, Chess." "She said you'd argue." Paul grinned. "She also said to tell you it's a company expense, building maintenance or something. I don't ask questions when she's writing the check." Lily watched the repairs with fascination, asking Paul about tools and pipes and how heat actually worked. Ethan made coffee and tried not to think about how much this would have cost or how many months it would have taken him to save for it. By 4 p.m., the new radiator system was installed and running. Real heat, steady heat, the kind of warmth Ethan had forgotten existed. Paul packed up his tools. "You're all set. Should last another 20 years if you maintain it." After he left, Ethan stood in the living room feeling the warm air and trying not to cry. Lily ran up and hugged him. "It's so warm, Daddy. Can I take off my coat?" "Yeah, baby. You can take off your coat." That night, Lily slept without extra blankets for the first time in months. Ethan checked on her 3 times, just to make sure she was comfortable, and each time found her sprawled across the bed like a starfish, completely at ease. He texted Vivian, "Heat's working. Thank you doesn't feel like enough." Her response came an hour later. "You're welcome. See you Tuesday." February turned into March. The team finished another major project. Ethan got his first full paycheck at the new salary and stared at the direct deposit notification like it might disappear. He paid off the gas bill. the electric bill, the pediatrician. Started putting money into savings for the first time in 3 years. On a rainy Tuesday in mid-March, Vivian suggested they eat lunch somewhere other than her office. "There's a place 2 blocks away," she said. Actual restaurant, actual tables, radical concept. They went to a small Italian place that was mostly empty at 12:30 on a weekday. The food was good. The conversation was easy. And somewhere between the appetizers and entrees, Ethan realized they'd stopped talking about work entirely and had moved into discussing books and music and whether Chicago deep dish actually counted as pizza. "It's casserole," Vivian said firmly. "Delicious casserole, but not pizza." That's fighting words in this city. "I'm from Boston originally. We have opinions about food." Ethan laughed. "I'm from Indiana. We have opinions about corn." Riveting. They argued about pizza until the check came, then argued about who should pay. Vivian won by physically taking the bill before Ethan could reach for it. Walking back to the office, Vivian said quietly, "This was nice. We should do it again." "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "We should." And they did. Every Tuesday, lunch shifted from Vivian's office to different restaurants around the city. They tried Thai and Mexican and Ethiopian food, found a diner that served breakfast all day, discovered a hole-in-the-wall Chinese place that Vivian claimed was better than anything in Boston. It became the part of the week Ethan looked forward to most. Not because the food was exceptional, though sometimes it was, but because for 90 minutes every Tuesday, he got to talk to someone who understood what it meant to be exhausted by expectations and still show up anyway. Someone who'd seen him at his worst and decided he was worth fighting for. Someone who'd become a friend without either of them quite meaning to. In early April, Lily's school had a parent breakfast event. Ethan had signed up weeks earlier, determined not to miss it. But the night before, a project crisis erupted. Corrupted data, missed deadline, client threatening to pull their contract. Ethan stayed at the office until 11 p.m. fixing it. Got home exhausted. Set his alarm for 5 a.m. to finish the repairs before the breakfast at 8. At 6:30 a.m., his phone rang. "Vivian, I heard about the data corruption. Where are you?" "Home. About to head in. I've got the breakfast thing at Lily's school at 8, so I'm trying to finish before—" "Don't come in. I'll handle it." "Vivian, it's my project, my responsibility. And it's your daughter's breakfast. Which one matters more?" Ethan closed his eyes. "I can do both." "You shouldn't have to. Send me the files. I'll finish the cleanup. You go to the breakfast." "You're the CEO. You can't—" "I can do whatever I want. That's the benefit of being CEO. Send me the files, Ethan." He sent them. Got Lily ready for school, showed up at the parent breakfast at 7:55 and sat with his daughter while she ate pancakes and introduced him to her friends. At 9:30, Vivian texted, "Crisis averted. Client's happy. Go enjoy your morning." Ethan stared at the message and felt something shift in his chest. She'd covered for him. Not because she had to. Not because it was her job, but because she knew what it cost to miss moments with Lily. Because somewhere along the way, she'd started caring about more than just fixing broken systems. She'd started caring about him. That afternoon, Ethan stopped by Vivian's office after the executive team meeting let out. "Thank you," he said, "for this morning." "You already thanked me, via text, 3 times. "Yeah, well, it meant a lot, the breakfast thing. I know it seems small, but it's not small. It's exactly what should be normal. You shouldn't have to choose between your job and your kid." "In most places, you do have to choose." Vivian's expression turned sad. "I know, that's the problem." They stood there in silence, and Ethan found himself noticing things he'd been carefully not noticing for weeks. The way Vivian's eyes softened when she talked about Lily. The way she always remembered details from their conversations. The way she showed up again and again, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. "Have you ever thought about having kids?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Vivian looked startled. "Where did that come from?" "I don't know, just, you're good with Lily when you talk about her. And I was wondering if you'd ever wanted that." "I did, once. But I was building the company and my father needed me and there was never time. Then he died and I was CEO and there was even less time." She smiled wryly. Now I'm 30 and single and married to a corporation. Not exactly ideal parenting circumstances. You could still, maybe, someday, she changed the subject smoothly. How's Lily doing with math? Last time you mentioned she was struggling. They talked about safer things after that, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, something neither of them was quite ready to name yet. April in Chicago brought unpredictable weather, warm one day, freezing the next. Like the city couldn't decide whether to commit to spring or cling to winter a little longer. Ethan felt the same way about his life. Some days he woke up believing he'd actually made it, that the nightmare of the past 3 years was finally over. Other days he waited for everything to collapse. The Tuesday lunches with Vivian continued. They'd become routine now, something Ethan planned his week around without quite admitting why. They'd exhausted most of the restaurants within walking distance of the office and had started venturing further, taking Vivian's car to neighborhoods Ethan had never explored despite living in Chicago for years. You've been here 6 years and never went to Pilsen? Vivian asked one Tuesday as they drove south toward a Mexican restaurant she'd heard about. I've been here 6 years and barely left my neighborhood except for work. There wasn't time for exploring. And now? Now I'm realizing how small my world was. The restaurant was tiny and packed, the kind of place where you ordered at a counter and found your own seat. They ended up at a table near the window, plates of tacos and rice between them, and Ethan watched Vivian try to eat a messy taco without getting salsa on her designer blouse. She failed. A drop of green salsa landed right on the collar. Damn it! She grabbed a napkin, dabbing at it. This is why I don't eat real food during work hours. Real food? You know what I mean, food that fights back, food with structural integrity issues. Ethan laughed. You sound like you're describing a building, not a taco. Same principles apply. If it can't support its own weight, it's a design flaw. They spent the next 10 minutes arguing about the engineering of various foods, and Ethan found himself thinking that this was the most ridiculous and comfortable he'd felt in years. Just eating tacos and talking nonsense with someone who made 7 figures and could have been anywhere else. On the drive back, Vivian asked, "How's Lily doing? Really doing?" The question caught Ethan off guard. They talked about Lily often, but usually in passing. This felt different, deeper. She's good. Better than good. She started drawing again, something she stopped doing after Sarah died. Her teacher says she's more engaged in class, more confident. Because you're home more. Yeah, turns out kids need their parents around. Revolutionary concept. Vivian was quiet for a moment, navigating traffic. Can I ask you something personal? Haven't we crossed that bridge already? Fair point. She glanced at him briefly before focusing back on the road. Do you ever think about dating? Moving on from Sarah? Ethan's stomach dropped. Where's this coming from? I'm just curious. You're 32. You've been alone for 3 years. At some point, I haven't been alone. I have Lily. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Ethan stared out the window, watching the city slide past. I think about it sometimes. But the idea of bringing someone into our lives, of asking Lily to accept a stranger, of trying to explain what the past 3 years were like, it feels impossible, like too much work for something that'll probably fail anyway. That's dark. That's realistic. My track record isn't great. Sarah died. My job almost destroyed me. Why would a relationship be any different? Because you're different now. You're not drowning anymore. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just waiting for the next disaster. Vivian pulled into the parking garage and turned off the car but didn't get out. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Ethan nodded. I'm terrified of being my father. He died alone in his office at midnight working on a merger that didn't even matter. No friends. Barely any family. Just money and power and nothing real. And I look at my life and I see the same pattern. I work all the time. I eat lunch alone. I go home to an empty apartment. The only real friendship I have is with an employee, which is probably crossing 17 different professional boundaries. Is that what this is? A friendship? Isn't it? Ethan thought about the past 4 months, the lunches, the conversations, the way Vivian had shown up again and again when he needed someone. Yeah, I guess it is. Then, as your friend, I'm telling you, don't give up on the idea of meeting someone. Don't let fear make your life smaller than it has to be. What about you? What about me? When's the last time you went on a date? Vivian laughed, but it sounded hollow. 2 years ago. Disaster. He wanted to date the CEO, not the person. Spent the entire dinner pitching me his startup idea. That's terrible. That's my life. Everyone wants something. Access, money, connections. Nobody just wants me. They sat in the car in the dim parking garage, and Ethan felt the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. He should get out, should go back to his office, should maintain the professional distance that was already badly eroded. Instead, he said, I want to know you, not because you're the CEO, just because you're you. Vivian turned to look at him, and something in her expression cracked. Yeah? Yeah. Even though I'm your boss and this is wildly inappropriate? Especially because of that. They both smiled, and the tension broke slightly. We should get back, Vivian said finally, before people start gossiping about why we're sitting in a car together. Pretty sure they're already gossiping. Probably. Jennifer asked me last week if we were dating. Ethan's heart jumped. What did you tell her? That you report to David Reeves, not me, so it's technically not a conflict of interest. Then I walked away before she could ask follow-up questions. They headed back inside, and Ethan spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to focus on work, while his brain replayed the conversation in the car. The way Vivian had looked at him, the way she'd said wildly inappropriate, like she was acknowledging something real, the way he'd felt sitting next to her, wanting to stay. That evening, Ethan picked up Lily from Mrs. Chen's and found his daughter unusually quiet during dinner. You okay, baby? Lily pushed rice around her plate. Emma's mom is getting married. She's really happy about it. Ethan's chest tightened. That's nice for Emma. She asked if you were going to get married again. What did you tell her? I said I didn't know. Lily looked up at him with those big eyes that saw too much. Are you? I don't have anyone to marry, sweetie. But if you did, would you want to? Ethan set down his fork, trying to figure out how to navigate this conversation. Maybe someday, if I met the right person, someone who was good to both of us. Would that bother you? Lily considered this seriously. Would she be nice? She'd have to be. I wouldn't pick someone who wasn't nice to you. Would she try to be my mom? The question gutted him. No, baby. Nobody could replace your mom, but she could be someone who cares about you, someone who's part of our family in a different way. Like Mrs. Chen? Kind of like that, yeah. Lily went back to eating, apparently satisfied, but Ethan sat there feeling like he'd just opened a door he wasn't ready to walk through. The next week brought a crisis that made everything else seem small by comparison. A major client discovered errors in data analysis that had been done before Ethan took over the department, Marcus's work, Marcus's mistakes, and threatened to sue. The executive team panicked. The board demanded answers. And Ethan found himself in a conference room at 6 p.m. on a Friday, explaining to 12 angry people how they were going to fix a problem he hadn't created. These errors go back 18 months, the legal counsel said, flipping through documents. Every analysis delivered to this client in that period is potentially compromised. We're looking at massive liability. Can we fix it? David Reeves asked. Ethan had spent the past 3 days reviewing every file, every calculation, every assumption. We can fix it, but it'll take time. We need to rerun all the analyses from scratch, validate every data point, build in additional quality controls so this never happens again. How long? 6 weeks minimum, maybe 8. The client wants answers in 2 weeks. Then the client's going to be disappointed. I can give them a preliminary assessment in 2 weeks, but a full correction will take longer. Rushing it risks making new mistakes. One of the board members, a man in his 60s who'd been glaring at Ethan since he walked in, leaned forward. This is exactly the kind of incompetence that got us into this mess. We need guarantees, not estimates. With respect, sir, the incompetence that got us into this mess was allowing a supervisor to work without oversight for years. I'm fixing that, but fixing it right takes time. We don't have time. This client represents 15% of our annual revenue. And if we give them garbage analysis in 2 weeks, they'll leave anyway and tell everyone why. At least if we take 6 weeks and do it properly, we keep our credibility. The room erupted into arguments. Ethan sat there trying not to feel like he was drowning again, like he was back on the 19th floor working impossible deadlines for people who didn't care if it broke him. Vivian, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. Ethan's right. We take the time to do this correctly. I'll handle the client relationship. I'll explain what happened and what we're doing to fix it. If they sue, they sue. But we're not cutting corners to save time. That's easy for you to say, the board member shot back. It's not your reputation on the line. It's exactly my reputation on the line. I'm the CEO, and I'm telling you we do this right, or we don't do it at all. The meeting ended badly, with half the board furious and the other half resigned. Ethan left feeling like he'd just survived a car crash. Vivian caught up with him at the elevator. You okay? Been better. Feel like I just painted a target on my back. You stood up for quality over speed. That's exactly what I hired you to do. Even if it cost the company millions? Especially then. The elevator arrived and they stepped inside. Ethan, I meant what I said in there. We fix this right. No shortcuts. The board's going to hate you. The board already hates me. This is nothing new. They rode down in silence. The building was mostly empty. Past 7 on a Friday, everyone else had gone home to their lives. Can I ask you something? Ethan said as they reached the lobby. Always. Do you ever regret it, taking over the company, fighting all these battles? Vivian thought about it. Sometimes, late at night when I'm alone and exhausted and wondering if any of this matters. But then I think about you, about the dozens of other people I've been able to help, about the changes we're actually making, and I think, yeah, it matters. Even if it's hard. They walked out into the cool April evening. The city was alive with people heading to bars and restaurants, couples holding hands, groups of friends laughing, normal Friday night things. You have plans tonight? Vivian asked. Lily and I are making pizza, the homemade kind where she puts too much cheese on everything, and it's basically inedible, but she's so proud of it I can't say no. Vivian smiled. That sounds perfect. What about you? I'll probably work for another few hours, then go home and watch something mindless on TV while eating takeout alone. The words came out before Ethan could stop them. You could come over for pizza, if you want. Vivian's eyes widened slightly. To your apartment? Yeah, I mean, Lily would love to see you, and the pizza's actually terrible, but in a fun way, and… He stopped, realizing he was rambling. Sorry, that was probably weird. You don't have to… I'd love to. Really? Really, should I bring anything? Just yourself. We've got plenty of cheese, way too much cheese. They drove separately, Vivian following Ethan's beat-up Honda in her sleek sedan, and Ethan spent the whole drive wondering what the hell he was thinking, inviting his boss to his apartment for homemade pizza with his 7-year-old daughter. This was either the best idea he'd ever had or a complete disaster waiting to happen. Lily was thrilled when Vivian walked in. Miss Vivian! She ran over and hugged Vivian's legs. Daddy said you were coming for pizza. I hope that's okay. It's the best. You can help us make it. Daddy's not very good at rolling the dough. Hey, Ethan protested. I'm adequate at rolling dough. Adequate means bad, Lily informed Vivian seriously. They spent the next hour in the tiny kitchen, flour everywhere, making pizza that was indeed loaded with far too much cheese. Lily showed Vivian how to arrange pepperoni in a smiley face. Vivian helped Lily spell out her name in olives. Ethan supervised and tried not to think about how natural this felt. How right. While the pizza baked, they sat in the living room. Lily showed Vivian her butterfly, the Christmas present from Ethan, and told her all about the imaginary adventures it went on. And then Butterfly saved the whole forest from the mean dragon by being really clever and brave. That's a good story, Vivian said. Did you make that up? Uh-huh. Daddy says I'm good at making up stories. Your dad's right. They ate the terrible, wonderful pizza together at the small kitchen table. Lily talked non-stop about school and friends and 100 small details that made up her world. Vivian listened like every word mattered, asking questions, remembering names. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Vivian her room and all her drawings. Ethan watched from the doorway as his daughter pulled out sketchpad after sketchpad, explaining each one with the kind of detail only a 7-year-old could maintain. This one's the ocean, and this one's our apartment but with a garden, and this one's you and me and Daddy. Ethan's heart stopped. He looked at the drawing Lily was holding up, 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall with long dark hair, one short with a big smile, one medium height with glasses. "When did you draw that?" Ethan asked quietly. "Last week. After you told me about maybe getting married someday, I drew what it might look like if we were a family with someone new." Vivian looked at the drawing, then at Ethan, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with words. After Lily went to bed, insisting that Vivian tuck her in alongside Ethan, they sat on the couch in the quiet living room. The space heater hummed softly, the city lights glowed through the windows. "She drew us as a family," Vivian said finally. "Yeah. Does that freak you out?" "Probably should. Doesn't." "Me neither." They sat in silence for a moment. "Ethan, what are we doing here?" He knew what she was asking, knew they'd been dancing around it for weeks. "I don't know, but I know I look forward to Tuesdays more than any other day of the week. I know you're the first person I want to tell when something good happens. And I know Lily drew a picture of us as a family and it felt right instead of wrong." "I'm your boss. You're my friend, who happens to also be my boss. The board would lose their minds. The board already thinks you're too idealistic and I'm a charity case. Let them think what they want." Vivian turned to face him. "I haven't done this in a long time. Haven't let anyone get close. Haven't wanted to." "What changed?" "You showed up in an elevator looking like you were barely surviving, and something in me recognized something in you. Loneliness, determination. That feeling of being trapped in a life that's slowly killing you but not knowing how to get out." "That's pretty dark." "That's pretty honest." Ethan reached over and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, nervous. "So what do we do now?" "I have no idea, but I know I don't want to go home to an empty apartment and pretend this didn't happen." "Then stay." "Ethan, not like that. Just stay. We'll watch something mindless on TV, eat the leftover pizza, be less alone together." Vivian looked at him for a long moment, then squeezed his hand. "Okay." They stayed up until midnight watching old sitcom reruns and talking about nothing important. And when Vivian finally left, standing at his door looking rumpled and happy and completely different from the polished CEO who'd walked in hours earlier, Ethan kissed her cheek and said goodnight. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't a declaration, just a gentle acknowledgement that something had shifted, that they were becoming something neither of them had planned, but both of them wanted. Over the next month, they navigated the impossible balance of being whatever they were becoming while maintaining professional boundaries at work. Tuesday lunches continued, but now they sometimes turned into dinner. Vivian started showing up at the apartment on weekends, helping Lily with art projects or reading stories. Ethan cooked meals that weren't just survival food, remembering what it felt like to care about taste and presentation. They didn't hide exactly. People at work definitely noticed, but they didn't advertise either. David Reeves pulled Ethan aside one day and said simply, "As long as you keep delivering good work, I don't care about your personal life. But be smart about it." Jennifer was more direct. "You and Vivian are together, right?" Ethan, caught off guard in the break room, stammered, It's complicated. It's only complicated if you make it complicated. Does she make you happy?" "Yeah." "Does she treat you right?" "Better than right." "Then who cares about complicated?" Jennifer grabbed her coffee and left, and Ethan stood there thinking she had a point. The client lawsuit settled in May. Vivian negotiated a resolution that cost the company money but preserved the relationship. Ethan's team delivered the corrected analyses ahead of schedule. The board grudgingly admitted that taking the time to do it right had been the correct call. Marcus's restraining order was granted. He disappeared from their lives as completely as if he'd never existed. And slowly, carefully, Ethan started believing that good things could last. By June, Lily was calling Vivian Miss V and asking when she was coming over like it was a normal question instead of something remarkable. Mrs. Chen had started including Vivian in her dinner invitations. The apartment felt less like a place Ethan was barely surviving and more like a home. One Sunday afternoon, the three of them were at the park, Lily on the swings, Ethan and Vivian on a bench nearby, when Lily ran over breathless and excited. "Daddy, Miss V, can we get ice cream?" "Sure, baby." "Can Miss V come live with us?" Ethan nearly choked on air. What? She's here all the time anyway, and she makes you smile, and I like her. So can she move in? Vivian was very carefully not looking at either of them. That's a big decision, Lily, not something we decide at the park. But you'll think about it? I'll think about it. Satisfied, Lily ran back to the swings. Ethan turned to Vivian. Sorry, she's 7, no filter. Don't apologize. Vivian was watching Lily play, a small smile on her face. She's right, though. I am here all the time. Is that bad? No, it's the best thing that's happened to me in years. They got ice cream, and as they walked back to the car, Lily between them holding both their hands, Ethan thought about how much had changed in 6 months, how far he'd come from that freezing Christmas Eve when he'd been ready to collapse under the weight of just surviving. How impossible this would have seemed then, walking through a park with his daughter and a woman who'd started as his CEO and become something infinitely more important. How hope had stopped feeling like a trap and started feeling like a promise. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan and Vivian sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. She asked if you could move in, Ethan said. I heard. What would you say if I asked? Vivian turned to look at him. Are you asking? Not yet. Too soon. Too fast. But maybe someday. If you wanted to. I'd say yes. Someday. When it's right. Yeah? Yeah. They kissed then properly, for the first time. Not a cheek kiss or a goodnight gesture, but something real and certain and full of possibility. And Ethan thought about Sarah, about the dream where she'd told him to let himself hope, about how she'd been right. Good things could happen, even after devastating loss, even after years of drowning. You just had to be brave enough to believe in them. Summer arrived in Chicago with humidity that made the air feel thick enough to swim through. Ethan's apartment, with its finally working heat that had been such a miracle in winter, now needed the windows open constantly just to stay bearable. But it was a different kind of uncomfortable than before. The kind that came with having enough, with stability, with a life that had stopped being about survival and started being about actually living. It was a Saturday morning in late June when everything shifted again. Ethan was making breakfast while Lily sat at the table drawing another one of her elaborate pictures. This one featuring butterflies and flowers and what looked like 3 people having a picnic. Vivian had stayed over the night before, something that was happening more frequently now, and was currently in the shower humming off-key to a song Ethan couldn't identify. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Is this Ethan Cole? A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. Yes? This is Rebecca Chen from Lincoln Property Management. I'm calling about the building at 2847 North Ashland, your current residence. Ethan's stomach dropped. Okay. The building has been sold. The new ownership is planning renovations and will not be renewing any existing leases. You'll need to vacate by August 1st. I'm sorry for the short notice, but August 1st? That's 5 weeks. I understand this is difficult. We're offering all displaced tenants a moving stipend of $500 and assistance with finding new housing if needed. After she hung up, Ethan stood in the kitchen holding his phone and trying to process what had just happened. 5 weeks. He had 5 weeks to find a new apartment in Chicago with rent he could afford, in a neighborhood with decent schools, available at the exact moment he needed it. The probability of all that aligning was close to 0. Daddy, you okay? Lily was watching him with worried eyes. Yeah, baby, just adult stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. But he was worrying, already calculating costs and scrolling through rental listings and feeling the familiar panic starting to build in his chest. Vivian emerged from the bathroom, hair damp, wearing one of Ethan's old t-shirts that hung to her knees. She took one look at his face and her expression shifted. What happened? Building's been sold. We have to move by August. That's 5 weeks. I'm aware. Vivian sat down at the table next to Lily. Okay, we'll figure it out. What's your budget? I can probably go up to $2,000 a month now. Maybe $2,200 if I'm careful. But finding a 2-bedroom in a decent area for that, available exactly when I need it, he shook his head. It's going to be tight. What about my place? Ethan stopped scrolling through listings. What? My place, it's 3 bedrooms. I'm barely there. You and Lily could move in. Vivian, that's practical. It makes sense. You need a place to live. I have space. We're together anyway. Why are we pretending otherwise? Lily's head popped up from her drawing. We get to live with Miss V? I don't know, baby. That's a big change. A good change. Please, Daddy? Ethan looked at Vivian, trying to figure out if she was serious or just trying to solve a problem the way she solved everything, with resources and determination. You really want us to move in? Not because you feel obligated, but because you actually want it? I've wanted it since Lily asked me in the park. I just didn't think you were ready. I'm not sure I am ready. Nobody's ever ready, but we can be not ready together. It should have felt too fast. They'd only been officially together for 2 months. Moving in was supposed to be a bigger decision, something you planned carefully and discussed endlessly. But Ethan thought about the past 6 months. How Vivian had shown up again and again, how she'd become part of their small family without either of them quite planning it, how Lily lit up every time she walked through the door. And he thought about Sarah's dream voice saying to let himself hope. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Lily cheered so loudly that Mrs. Chen knocked on the wall from next door. The next 5 weeks were chaos. Packing up an apartment Ethan had lived in for 3 years, sorting through belongings that ranged from essential to why do I still have this, coordinating movers and trying to explain to Lily that yes, they were moving in with Miss V, but no, that didn't mean she could bring 17 stuffed animals. 15, Lily negotiated. 10. 13, and I'll keep my room clean for a whole month. Deal, Mrs. Chen cried when they told her. I'm happy for you, so happy, but I'll miss you both. We're not disappearing, Ethan assured her. We'll still visit, and you're invited to dinner anytime. At a billionaire's apartment? I don't think so. At our apartment, where we live. Please, Mrs. Chen, your family. The old woman hugged him tight. You've come so far, Ethan. I'm proud of you. Vivian's apartment was in a high-rise downtown with a doorman and elevators that didn't rattle and heating that actually worked. The first time Lily saw it, she stood in the middle of the massive living room and spun in circles. It's so big. Daddy, look how big it is. I see it, baby. Can I really live here? Vivian knelt down to Lily's level. This is your home now, yours and your dad's and mine, together. Where's my room? Come on, I'll show you. She led Lily down a hallway to a bedroom that was easily twice the size of her old one. Someone, Vivian, obviously, had already set up a bed and a desk and had even hung some of Lily's drawings on the walls. You did this? Ethan asked quietly. I wanted her to feel like it was hers, not just a guest room. Lily was already exploring, opening drawers, testing the bed, looking out the huge windows at the city spread below. I can see everything from here. Daddy, come look. Ethan joined her at the window. From this high up, Chicago looked different. Cleaner. More organized. Like someone had taken all the chaos and given it structure. What do you think? Vivian asked, coming to stand beside him. I think this is insane. I think I'm moving from a $1,400 apartment with broken heat into a place that probably costs more per month than I made in a year at my old job. Does that bother you? Honestly? Yeah. A little. Feels like I'm taking advantage. You're not. You're letting someone who cares about you help. That's different. Is it? Yes. Vivian's voice was firm. Ethan, you spent 3 years drowning because you were too proud to ask for help. Don't do that again. Not with me. He wanted to argue, wanted to insist he could find his own place, maintain his independence, prove he didn't need rescuing. But the truth was simpler and harder. He was tired of being alone, tired of making everything difficult because difficult felt safer than vulnerable, tired of treating help like weakness. Okay, he said finally. Okay. They moved in on the last Saturday in July. Mrs. Chen came with them, insisting on helping despite being 73 and having no business carrying boxes. Jennifer showed up too, along with 2 other analysts from Ethan's team who'd somehow heard about the move and decided to volunteer. By evening, most of their belongings were unpacked. The apartment looked like a strange collision of lives. Vivian's expensive minimalist furniture next to Ethan's beat-up couch that he'd refused to get rid of. Lily's colorful drawings on walls that had previously held abstract art worth more than a car. "It looks like a real home," Jennifer said, surveying the living room. "Not a magazine spread, a place where actual people live." Vivian looked around and smiled. "Good. That's exactly what I wanted." They ordered pizza, real pizza this time, from a place that delivered, and ate sitting on the floor because there weren't enough chairs for everyone. Lily fell asleep on the couch halfway through the meal, exhausted from excitement and running around all day. After everyone left, Ethan carried Lily to her new room and tucked her in. She stirred slightly. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby." "I like it here. It feels safe." The words hit him hard. "It is safe, I promise." "I know, because you're here, and Miss V is here, and we're together." After she fell back asleep, Ethan found Vivian on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "She said it feels safe here," he told her. "That's all I wanted, for both of you." Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind. They stood like that in comfortable silence, watching Chicago glow in the darkness. "I never thought I'd have this again," Ethan said quietly. "After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over, that I'd just focus on Lily and work and surviving. That was supposed to be enough. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't, and I was so angry about that, like wanting more made me selfish or ungrateful." Vivian turned in his arms to face him. "Wanting to be happy doesn't make you selfish. It makes you human." "When did you get so wise?" "When I spent 2 years running a company alone and realized money and power don't mean anything if you have no one to share it with." They kissed, and Ethan thought about how far they'd both come. Two people who'd been drowning in different ways, finding each other by accident and building something neither of them had planned. The first month in the new apartment had its adjustments. Lily took a week to stop asking if it was really okay to touch things, or if she needed permission to use the kitchen. Ethan kept catching himself apologizing for taking up space or making noise. Vivian had to consciously stop treating the apartment like a showroom and start letting it get messy and lived in. But slowly, it started working. They established routines. Sunday breakfasts together, Ethan cooking, Lily setting the table, Vivian making coffee. Weeknight dinners where they all talked about their days. Movie nights where Lily got to pick the film and usually chose something animated that made Ethan fall asleep on the couch. Mrs. Chen came for dinner every other week, insisting on cooking even though Vivian's kitchen intimidated her. "Too clean," she'd mutter. "How do you cook in a kitchen this clean?" Work continued to be complicated. The board was still split on Vivian's reforms. Ethan's department was thriving, but constantly under scrutiny. People gossiped about their relationship, some supportive, some cynical, most just curious. David Reeves pulled Ethan aside in September. "The board's asking questions. About my performance? About your relationship with Vivian, whether it's affecting your judgment, whether you're getting preferential treatment." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Am I getting preferential treatment?" "Not that I can see. Your team's numbers are strong. Projects are coming in on time and under budget. Client satisfaction is up. If anything, you're working harder to prove you earned your position." "Then what's the problem?" "The problem is optics. The problem is that half the board thinks Vivian promoted you because you're together, and the other half thinks you're together because she promoted you. Neither version is true, but perception matters." "So what do you want me to do? Quit? Break up with her? Pretend the past 8 months didn't happen?" Reeves held up his hands. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just warning you that this is going to keep being an issue. You need to be prepared for that." That night, Ethan told Vivian about the conversation. "I knew this would happen," she said, pacing the living room. "I knew people would question everything." "Does it change anything? For you?" "No." "Does it for you?" "No, but Vivian, if I'm making your job harder, you're not. The board makes my job harder. Their refusal to see past traditional power structures makes my job harder. You being good at your work and also someone I care about doesn't make anything harder except their narrow worldview." "That's a great speech, but it doesn't solve the problem." "Then we'll solve it the same way we solve everything else, by doing good work and refusing to apologize for being happy." It wasn't a perfect solution, But it was honest. October brought Lily's 8th birthday. She wanted a party, a real one, with friends from school and cake and decorations. The first birthday since Sarah died where she'd asked for more than just a quiet celebration at home. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked when she told him. "We can do something smaller if you want." "I want a party with Emma and Sophie and everyone, and I want Miss V to help plan it." Vivian took the assignment seriously. She and Lily spent hours designing invitations, planning games, debating whether the theme should be butterflies or space or both. They settled on butterflies with a space background, which made no logical sense but made perfect sense to an 8-year-old. The party was at the apartment, 20 kids running around, parents awkwardly making conversation. Noise levels that would have horrified Vivian 6 months ago, but now just made her smile. Ethan watched her helping kids with craft projects, mediating disputes over game rules, and cutting cake with the same focus she brought to board meetings. And he thought about how much she'd changed, how much they'd both changed. After everyone left and Lily was asleep, surrounded by new presents and full of cake, Ethan and Vivian collapsed on the couch. "That was exhausting," Vivian said. "That was perfect. You were perfect. I let 3 kids put glitter in their hair. Their parents are going to hate me. Their parents got free cake and didn't have to host. They'll survive." Vivian leaned against him. "She's so happy, Ethan. Lily, she's so different from 6 months ago." "We all are." "Do you think Sarah would approve? Of us?" The question surprised him. Vivian had never asked about Sarah before, had carefully avoided the subject except when Ethan brought it up. "Yeah," he said after thinking about it. "I think she would. Sarah always said I needed someone who'd push me to be better, someone who wouldn't let me hide." "That's you." "I'm not trying to replace her." "I know. You couldn't if you tried. You're something different, something new." They sat in silence for a while, and then Vivian said, "I love you. I've been trying to find the right time to say it, but there isn't a right time, so I'm just saying it now. I love you." Ethan turned to look at her. "I love you too. Have for a while. Just wasn't sure if I was allowed to say it." "Why wouldn't you be allowed?" "Because it feels too good. Like if I acknowledge it out loud, something will go wrong." "Ethan, things are going to go wrong. That's life. Projects will fail. The board will keep being difficult. Lily will have bad days. But that doesn't mean we can't be happy in between the hard parts." "When did you get so optimistic?" "When I stopped eating lunch alone." They kissed, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like peace. By November, Lily had started calling Vivian V instead of Miss V. Small change, but it mattered. It meant Vivian wasn't a guest anymore. She was family. The 3 of them developed their own small traditions. Friday movie nights, Sunday morning pancakes, a drawer in the kitchen that was just for Lily's art supplies, a corner of the living room that was designated as fort building space. Mrs. Chen visited often, always bringing soup and advice and stories about her own children and grandchildren. She'd taken to treating Vivian like another daughter, which meant equal parts warmth and criticism. "You work too much," she told Vivian one Sunday. "You have a family now. They should come first." "I'm trying, Mrs. Chen." Trying is not the same as doing. But Vivian was doing better. She'd started leaving the office by 6 most days, had stopped checking email after dinner, had learned that the company wouldn't collapse if she wasn't available every second. And Ethan had learned to accept help without feeling like he was failing, had stopped calculating costs before making decisions, had started believing that stability could last. December came, and with it the anniversary of the worst Christmas Eve of Ethan's life and the beginning of everything that came after. On Christmas Eve morning, he woke up early and found Vivian already in the kitchen making coffee. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Kept thinking about last year, about finding you in that office at midnight, about how close we came to never meeting." "I was thinking about that too." They stood at the window watching the city wake up. Snow was falling, light and clean, covering everything in white. "I almost didn't come to the office that night," Vivian said. "Had planned to work from home. Changed my mind at the last minute because I needed to pick up some files." Sliding doors moment. "What?" "That movie, about how one small choice changes everything. If you hadn't come to the office, you wouldn't have seen me in the elevator, wouldn't have investigated, wouldn't have shown up at my apartment." And you'd still be working for Marcus, freezing in that apartment, missing time with Lily. And you'd still be eating lunch alone. They were quiet for a moment. I don't believe in fate, Vivian said finally, but I believe in chance, and I believe in what we choose to do with it. That night was chance. Everything after was choice. Best choice I ever made. Which choice? All of them. Signing the paperwork, taking the promotion, trusting you, letting you help, moving in here, loving you. Vivian kissed him, and it tasted like coffee and snow and second chances. That night, they had Christmas Eve dinner with Lily and Mrs. Chen. The apartment was warm, truly warm, not space heater warm. The tree in the corner was real and huge and covered in lights. Presents were piled underneath, more than Lily had ever seen. After dinner, Mrs. Chen pulled Ethan aside. "You look happy," she said. "Really happy, not just pretending." "I am happy. Didn't think I'd ever say that again. Oh, Sarah would be glad. She'd want this for you." "I think so too." They let Lily open one present before bed, a tradition Ethan had started when she was 3 and maintained even through the worst years. This year she picked a large box from Vivian. Inside was a butterfly habitat kit, the kind where you could raise real butterflies from caterpillars and then release them. "We can do it together," Vivian told her. "Watch them transform, see how they change." Lily hugged her tight. "Thank you, Vi. This is the best present ever." After Lily went to bed, Ethan and Vivian sat on the couch looking at the tree lights. "I got you something too," Vivian said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a key. "I know you already have a key to the apartment," Vivian said, "but this one's different. This one's official. Your name on the deed. Equal ownership. Not my place where you're staying. Our place. Home." Ethan stared at the key, then at her. "Vivian, I can't." "You can. And you will. Because that's what this is. That's what we are. Equal partners in everything." He wanted to argue, wanted to say it was too much, too fast, too generous. But the truth was simpler. He wanted this, wanted the home and the family and the life they were building together. "Okay," he said. "Thank you. Merry Christmas, Ethan." Merry Christmas. They stayed up late talking about the past year, about everything that had changed, about the future they were building. And when Ethan finally went to bed, he walked past Lily's room and saw the butterfly drawing she'd made months ago, the one with 3 stick figures holding hands, now hanging on her wall in a real frame. He stood there looking at it, thinking about transformation and second chances, and how the worst night of his life had somehow led to the best year. How being broken had made space for healing. How letting someone see his struggle had opened the door to actual help. How loving again didn't erase the past, but it made the future possible. The next morning, Christmas Day, Lily woke them up early. They opened presents together, real presents, thoughtful presents, more than enough presents. Ethan gave Vivian a first edition of her favorite book. Vivian gave Ethan a custom photo album filled with pictures of the past year. They both gave Lily too many things, but she was 8 and it was Christmas and they didn't care. After presents, they made breakfast together. Pancakes again, but fancy ones this time, with fruit and whipped cream and way too much sugar. "Can we call this a family tradition?" Lily asked through a mouthful of pancakes. "Call what a tradition?" Ethan asked. "Christmas morning pancakes, all of us together, every year." Vivian looked at Ethan, and he saw the question in her eyes. Every year. Was that a promise they could make? "Yeah," Ethan said. "Every year. That's a tradition." Later, while Lily was playing with her new toys, Vivian found Ethan on the balcony. "You promised her every year," she said. "I did." "That's a long-term commitment." "I know." "Good. Because I'm planning to hold you to it." They stood together looking out at Chicago covered in snow, and Ethan thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that freezing office on Christmas Eve to this moment, warm and safe and together. It hadn't been smooth, hadn't been easy. There'd been fear and doubt and moments where he'd almost run because hope felt too dangerous. But he'd stayed. He'd chosen to trust, and that choice had changed everything. "What are you thinking about?" Vivian asked. "Butterflies. Random. Not really. Lily's obsessed with them because of the whole transformation thing. Caterpillar to butterfly." But the thing people don't talk about is what happens in between, in the chrysalis. The caterpillar doesn't just grow wings, it completely dissolves, breaks down into nothing, and then rebuilds itself into something new. That's kind of horrifying. Yeah, but also kind of beautiful, because you can't become something new without first breaking apart. And maybe that's what the past 3 years were, me dissolving, everything falling apart, so I could rebuild into something better. Vivian was quiet for a moment. And now? Now I'm on the other side. New life, new family, new everything. Do you miss the old version? Parts of it. I miss Sarah. I'll always miss her. But I don't miss who I was when she died. That person was drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. This version is better, stronger, more honest. I like this version. Yeah? Yeah. They went inside to join Lily, who was building an elaborate butterfly sanctuary with her new toy blocks and explaining to her stuffed animals exactly how metamorphosis worked. And Ethan thought about how life never turns out the way you plan, how the worst moments can lead to unexpected transformation, how sometimes you have to completely fall apart before you can rebuild into something stronger. The system was still broken, the company still had problems, the board would keep pushing back on reforms. There would be hard days ahead, challenges they couldn't predict, moments where everything felt impossible again. But they'd face it together, as a family, as partners, as people who'd learned that hope wasn't a weakness, it was survival, that accepting help wasn't failure, it was courage, that love after loss wasn't betrayal, it was proof that healing was possible. Lily looked up from her blocks. Daddy, when do we start the butterfly kit? We can start today if you want. Can we release them when they transform? Let them fly away? That's the whole point, baby. You raise them and care for them, and then you let them go free. But won't we miss them? Ethan thought about the question, about holding on and letting go, about transformation and freedom, and what it meant to truly care about something. Yeah, he said. We'll miss them, but watching them fly will be worth it. Vivian smiled at him over Lily's head, and Ethan understood that they were talking about more than just butterflies. They were talking about survival and transformation and the courage it takes to let yourself become something new. About the fact that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is break apart completely and trust that you'll rebuild into something stronger. About how the people who see you at your worst and decide to stay anyway aren't just friends or partners, they're family in the truest sense. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan and Vivian hung the butterfly drawing in the living room. Not in a kid's room where guests wouldn't see it, in the main space, where it belonged. A reminder of where they'd been and where they were going. A symbol of transformation and second chances and the family they'd built from broken pieces. 3 stick figures holding hands, simple, imperfect, real. And underneath it, in Lily's careful 8-year-old handwriting, my family. Not complicated, not corporate, not polished or perfect, just true. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.